down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the number one liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast, and I am your host, Rick. Tonight, well, I mean, as you can see by the video title, Joe Biden exclaimed something while he was in Florida on a hot mic. I don't know if he intended to do it, but whatever. I mean, he's pretty much out of his gourd anyway. But before I get into that, and the rest of my other topics tonight, I wanted to let you know that I have not only added the live streams to the live stream dates and times to the Rumble image that is on the starting video. I also have this. Let me go ahead and bring this up real quick here. I also have it now sitting in to the left of the glass is the glasses in the banner. So now if you want to find out, or you can't remember when I do my live streams, just go to the Whiskey_Musings_broadcast channel at rumble.com. So if you go rumble.com/C, that's lowercase c as in Charlie, /Whiskey_Musings_broadcast, you'll be able to find my live stream times, days and times in the banner, as well as in the videos. I am trying to help out by getting you guys all able to see when I stream, so you can of course come and join. So that's the thing. Now, tonight I have a request for you. The request basically is this. I'm not doing a sponsor. I know I don't push this very often. I kind of mention it every so often, but this is the Whiskey Musings logo gear store. And how you get there is store.whiskeymusings.online. That's store, STORE, .whiskeymusings.online. And you can come here and take a look at all of the products that I have available that have the Whiskey Musings logo on them. In fact, tonight I am wearing, as soon as I can find them, I am wearing these guys right here. Give it a second for it to pop up. I don't know why it seems to be running a little slow today, but it will eventually come up. But it's the unisex jogger pants, and you can see them right here with the logo, and the logo's on the right side, and they're really comfy and really kind of warm. I've got those on, and then of course I also have the and let me go ahead and back off here. I have the neck gaiter that you can see right here on the left side, and that is this guy right here, because it is going to start getting colder, and you can go ahead and put this on your neck and shows support for the show. I try to keep the prices down low. Obviously, I cover my costs, and there's a little bit extra for the show to support the show, of course, but I try to do my best not to gouge people. So do me a favor, go and check that out. And, that is great. It also, the link for the store is down below in the description for the stream. So I really would appreciate that. There's, men's stuff, women's stuff. There's, trinkets and mugs, glasses, tank tops, t-shirts, sweatshirts, all kinds of stuff there. So do me a favor, go check it out. I'd appreciate it. And if you happen to buy something, you can support the store and get something wonderful. for Christmas, because Christmas is coming up. I mean, it's starting to get out there. So maybe you've got a someone that you want to get, or maybe you want to get something for maybe just or for yourself. I mean, come on, let's all admit we are a good, big, huge family between the Mark K Show and here with my Whiskey Warriors. You guys are absolutely wonderful, and I am so appreciative of the fact that you guys come here and hang out with me on Wednesdays and Saturdays. All right. So first off, let me get out of the way so you can see my background, because this is October and I am focusing on using spooky backgrounds. So let me duck out of the way so you can see it. And that is tonight's background for the show. So it's kind of a spooky background. It's got eyes right here. They're sort of in the ether mix showing up. Ooh, scary. Anyway, and I am still trying to prepare for, of course, my special, my Halloween special that will be airing on the last Saturday of the month, since the Halloween is actually on, I believe, a Monday. So, all right. Now I got a packed show for you guys this evening. It's really, really packed with a lot of good information and that kind of stuff. Plus, I also have a fantastic pet of the week for tonight. I haven't seen the submitter person in the chat yet, but I have a feeling that she will probably come maybe a little later, or she might just watch the recording afterward. Regardless, it is a very well-loved kitty, and I'll explain when I get there. So stay tuned for that. All right. Tonight I am drinking the Redbreast 12, the single pot still. And you know what? I'm going to have to admit, this and the Jameson Black Barrel are the two are I've been saying over and over are my two favorites. But I got to admit, there's a third one that every time I have a glass and it slides up in inches, just that much closer to number one, and that's the Four Roses. So, I know B. Patrick is out there. I see her and her husband, Fat Paws. Eventually, they turned me on to the Four Roses. So I'm telling you, every time I drink it, it's getting that much closer to being in the top slot with the other two. In fact, it might even overtake it. I don't know. We'll see. All right. So, I don't know if anybody saw this. This kind of popped in the Daily Wire late today. And before I get going, I do have to bring this up. So you'll recall a few episodes ago where the pet of the week was Sir Legs-a-Lot. And unfortunately, Sir Legs-a-Lot passed away today. He took a dive in the dog's bowl. And he didn't quite make it. Unfortunately, water and spiders don't mix. So Sir Legs-a-Lot has gone on to the proverbial web in the sky. And oh yes, there she is. Our pet of the week submitter for tonight. So that's cool. Thank you for joining. Appreciate it. All right. So what was I talking about? I was talking about Joe Biden. Now we all know about Joe Biden and his angry Joe, and we all know when he talks about the fighting Scranton kid, Scranton kid fighting Joe. Well, apparently a video has come out from Joe's visit to Florida. Now, first of all, let me just explain something to you. I don't care who it is in office. But I personally, I'm kind of like, well, let me say this. I'm with Ben Shapiro on this because Ben Shapiro feels the same way I do. Ben Shapiro does not like the idea of presidents going to disaster areas. And as wonderful of a thing as it is to go down and like try to, give moral support to the people on the ground. I honestly, I just don't see, I mean, you need to understand there's a lot of logistics that go into doing a presidential visit like that. I mean, if, I can remember the president like Obama coming to Seattle and the, shutting down traffic and, clearing spaces and, him and his motorcade and everything else going through the city and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it just turned regular average citizens' lives into a complete mess. And can you just imagine that happening for a, area that has been ravaged by a hurricane like this? And honestly, I don't see, outside of the image that it presents for the person who is going there in terms of things like photo ops and stuff, I honestly don't think it really does anything other than maybe a little bit in terms of the imagery that can be gained by it. Again, him going, like Ben says, the president going there doesn't make things just magically disappear. It doesn't make the destruction just magically disappear. It's not like Joe Biden's going to walk out there, wave his hands and go away. And it's, boom, everything is all gone. He has no magic powers. So all of the police and the fire and everything else that have to be used in order to secure the president during his visit, I think would be better spent elsewhere. So honestly, if I were to be president and something like this were to happen, I would not go and visit, for the plain and simple fact that the people on the ground need to focus on the recovery efforts. They would need to focus on much more important things than my showing up at the scene of the disaster area. It just doesn't work for me. But that being said, he did go and visit and got the photos and everything else. But this popped. And so let me show you this. So apparently Biden was in a conversation with the mayor of Fort Myers, Florida, and in a hot mic scenario, he basically said, and I quote, "No one F's with a Biden." Now, obviously, I'm not going to put the swear word in there just because that's just not me. But he apparently went down there, and let me kind of read down in the piece, and a person called Greg Price, who is a digital strategist, captured video of the hot mic moment and shared it in a tweet. And I'm not going to play the tweet because I know a lot of people don't like listening to the man speak. It doesn't matter anyway, because you can hardly hear what he is saying. But apparently he was conversing with, and you can see the photo if you're watching on Rumble. You can see the photo of the two. The mayor is on the right-hand side of the picture in the bucket hat. Biden has his back to the camera in a blue and white striped shirt. And apparently he shakes hands with the man, who is Mayor Ray Murphy. And then Murray thanks Biden. Murray says, quote, "Thanks for everything. Thanks for coming down. We appreciate it." And then they kind of exchange some words which are unintelligible. And then next thing you hear clearly is Biden laughs, and then he says, "No one F's with a Biden." And then Murphy laughs and says, "You're GD right." Okay. So, there's some cuss words in there. And if you want to go take a look, I did put the Daily Wire link where I got this from in the show notes. But then Biden continues and he says, quote, "You can't argue with your brothers outside the house." And to which the mayor replied back to that, "That's exactly right. That's exactly right." Now, the funny thing is, whenever something like this happens, of course, the immediate response comes from critics, which I am one. But I didn't do anything on Twitter for this. But, the critics immediately jumped out and said things like, "Oh, nobody F's with a Biden, right? Except for OPEC, Saudis, Russia, China, Donald John Trump." So, yeah. And further on down, somebody else popped up and said, "Except the Taliban." And then, of course, somebody else popped in and goes, "China, except for China and Russia and Ukraine and anyone else who paid them." But away from that, sure. The CCP, Russia, North Korea, OPEC, and inflation could not be reached for comment. Somebody called at Liberty Lock Pod remarking there as well. And, honestly, I'm going to tell you, his entire presidency, seriously, has been nothing but him getting owned. He is getting owned by not only real people, but he's also getting owned by inanimate objects. And what I mean by inanimate objects in particular is this whole thing about inflation. Now, for those of you who haven't listened to the program or haven't really paid attention to all these other things that are, all these other Republican pundits like Dan Bongino, Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, inflation is driven by government spending, because what ends up happening is government spending floods the market with all kinds of dollars. Therefore, the value of the dollar goes down. There's more dollars chasing not enough goods, which leads to inflation. Well, Biden doesn't believe that. Okay. Biden doesn't believe that. And unfortunately, we now have the national debt, which has just surpassed $31 trillion. And this is the highest that it has ever been in our history, is $31 trillion. And apparently debt is continuing to climb, according to this Fox News article. Again, it's in the show notes on Rumble and YouTube in particular. Debt continues to climb even after the massive levels of spending during the COVID pandemic have waned. And, again, I've said it on this show. I've said it on this podcast before. This is ridiculous. He is pushing us into a recession. He is pushing us into a position where we are going to essentially, for those that may not understand federal deficit spending, we are essentially borrowing money in the anticipation that we are going to be able to raise that money back in taxes in the future. Okay, that's how we pay for things. We don't have a balanced budget. This is not like a family budget would be, in the fact that, as a family, you only have so much income coming in, and the only way to get more income coming in is to go and actually do more work. Well, government doesn't produce anything. It produces literally zero. It cannot produce anything or gain money without taking it from somewhere else. And that's essentially where we're at, is what they are doing is they are borrowing against your grandkids, against your great grandkids, and possibly even your great great grandkids, in the anticipation that we are going to be able to raise that money back up in taxes over the next several decades in order to pay this down. Now, this is a problem because, of course, the more money that we spend, the higher our debt goes, the higher the inflation rate rises, which the only real thing that we have to try and cut down inflation is to raise interest rates. And that's exactly what's happening, which of course slows down spending and ends up stagnating the economy. So this guy is basically spending us into oblivion, is essentially what is happening. Okay. So yeah, they are not, and actually Jarhead puts it right. Government gets money three ways: taxes, forfeiture, meaning taking it from the American people, or printing it. Those are the only, I mean, there is no redeeming quality in government. Government does not produce a damn thing other than a bunch of headaches for the American people. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Okay. Yes, we are in a recession. We're heading towards stagflation. This is looking a hell of a lot like Jimmy Carter era, 1970s and everything else. And you know what? What's even worse is the fact that we're actually headed that way, even more so than just inflation. One other thing I wanted to point out to you as well is that I don't know if you caught this, but in the Epic Times, they broke this one. Oops. I got to switch to the other view real quick. Oops. Okay, where is this? Not that one. Oop. Here we go. All right. So this one here, the Epic Times broke this, where the U.S. is now sending an additional $625 million in military assistance to Ukraine. So again, all they are doing is just spending, and we, the American people, are not going to gain anything back about it. Okay, just flat out. Well, you also have another bad policy, which is in response to Biden deciding, and several other states. I think I talked about this last episode, where several states, including New York, Washington, I believe Oregon and California, have decided to jump on the bandwagon here and get rid of gas-powered vehicles. Okay. What they don't understand, though, is that the American people actually, they don't want it. And this comes from a poll that is, pop that up. So a poll that has been put out by the Trafalgar Group and Convention of States. Okay, now keep in mind the Trafalgar Group is so far the most accurate polling organization on the voting and the way that the voting and everything is going to potentially go. They predicted several things, then most of the pollsters weren't predicting anything. So the poll itself surveyed a little over 1,000 likely general election voters between September 17th and 20th, and has a margin of error of less than 3%. And let me go ahead and let me see if I can, where is it? Here it is. And let me see. Which screen is this? Let's hope this is the right screen. Doesn't look like it. Not that one. That one. Nope. That is not the screen. That's not the screen either. Gosh, I am just, there we go. All right. So this is the results of that poll. Basically overall, the increase of domestic oil and gas production was favored at 40%. Focusing on new energy investments on renewables was 25%. Building additional power plants was 10%. But eliminate gas-powered vehicles and move to electric garnered a wonderful 1.4%. Okay, 1.4% overall. Now, what's shocking, though, is when you go to the next slide here, which is focusing directly on Democrats. Even Democrats who were given the opportunity to talk about eliminating gas-powered vehicles and moving to electric. It's right there in the middle of the slide in kind of the puke green, the lime green color. Only 3% of the respondents who were identified as Democrats said that they want to eliminate gas-powered vehicles. Okay. Now, obviously, GOP, nobody, zero, wanted that. And the independents even came in at a whopping 1.7% for a desire to eliminate gas-powered vehicles. So honestly, Biden is way out of touch with the American people, period, when it comes to things like getting rid of gas-powered vehicles. All right. Now, he obviously, he's just not getting it. He's just not getting it. And he's going to get beaten up off of that as well. Now, the other, one other thing that happened, which I don't know if anybody, noticed on this one, but, we've cut back all of our oil production and we've cut back on our natural gas production, and we've been buying it from other countries. And unfortunately for us, we've been begging OPEC. Well, I should say Biden has been begging OPEC and begging Venezuela to get crude oil brought to our shores. Now, the thing about it is you either produce locally or you have to purchase it from somewhere. That's the only two ways that you're going to be able to get any kind of supplies to be able to do anything. And one of the things that actually drives gas prices, which those of us in the know understand this, but Biden doesn't seem to get because he keeps trying to smack down the people who are trying to sell it at the pump, is that gas prices are driven largely by the crude oil prices. So when the crude oil prices go up, gas prices go up. When the crude oil prices go down, gas prices go down in general. And the reason for that is because those prices are made up of roughly half. So the oil that would have to be purchased, the crude oil that has to be purchased in order to get refined into the products that we need in terms of things like gas for our cars, as well as any of our other oil products, they have to be refined and they have to be cleaned up and they have to be further taken down and broken down in order for our cars and all of our machinery to be able to use them. Well, the problem with this, of course, and not having our own supplies is, again, we have to purchase from somewhere else. So 50% of what you see at the pump in terms of for a gallon of gas comes from the prices of crude oil. Well, I don't know if anybody saw this, but this popped just, 4 hours ago, but I actually heard about it earlier today. And this comes from the BBC. Apparently, OPEC and OPEC Plus, by the way, OPEC was originally 4 or 5 countries. OPEC Plus actually includes countries like Russia, believe it or not. But OPEC has decided to cut production, not increase production, but to cut production by 2 million barrels a day. Okay. To give you an idea in terms of a sense of scale, that is 1/10 of what we here in the United States typically utilize on a daily basis. We typically use 20 million barrels of oil a day on average in a normal year. Now, one of the biggest challenges that we have with OPEC Plus is the fact that they are attempting to raise prices. And the reason for this is because of the fact that crude oil prices have dropped over time, not back to pre-Biden levels, but they were going down. Now, the reason why they were going down is because of the fact that China wasn't buying quite as much. They were a little soft because of all the COVID things that they're dealing with over there. So their need for oil was not that great. Here in the US, inflation has caused people to stop driving as much. And so therefore our needs have cut back. And so because of that, the price of crude oil per barrel has dropped some. But see, Biden doesn't understand that. Biden actually accuses the people who are putting the gas at the pump at price gouging, and the oil companies at price gouging, because he doesn't understand how these things actually work. Now, the other thing, and here's a graphic that you can see how it's gone up and peaked in roughly around, I don't know, June, or not June, but roughly around, March, April timeframe of 2022, and how it's come down a little bit to 91.84. It looked like it peaked just a little over 125, so probably about $130 a barrel. And now it's starting to drop off and so on and so forth. But the thing about it is that we don't set the prices, and OPEC is setting the prices, and they're doing it because they're losing money because demand has been dropping off. Now, winter comes here in the US and in Europe, and outside of heating oil or any kind of heating use out of this crude oil, you're going to see a lowering of the consumption, just because of the fact that we're not driving our cars as much. But what's even worse is the fact that Biden himself feels that releasing our oil reserves is a methodology by which we can actually combat this. So here's the thing, though, is that our strategic petroleum reserves are actually at their lowest levels that they've ever been since they were first incepted. The strategic oil reserves, and you can actually look, and I did an entire episode basically on the strategic petroleum reserves, the 4 wells that are down, that they're old salt caverns in Louisiana and Texas, along the Gulf Coast. And, we can only hold about 700 million barrels. I think it's like 770 million, if I recall the exact number correctly. But they are being emptied right now. Now, the thing about this is, and the thing that's really frustrating with this is, of course, Trump wanted to actually fill the strategic petroleum reserve to the brim when oil prices were extremely low during his presidency. Congress nixed that. They took it out because they didn't want him to have a win, essentially. They removed it from the bill that was going to include it. They took that out. And so it's just a mess. And yes, he is releasing roughly 10 million more barrels of oil, which again, like I just said, would only give us a half a day's worth. That's, again, assuming that we could pump all 10 at once. We can't. We can only pump out roughly 1 million barrels per day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So all he's really done is given us 1/20th of our consumption for 10 days. That's it. That's all he's doing. And he keeps wanting to use it over and over. And the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was actually built for if we got into war, etc., that we would have that capability to be able to backfill for the army and so on and so forth. It was actually conceived and implemented back after the oil embargoes of the early 1970s, where OPEC did all of that stuff. And the idea, of course, is to protect us and be able to allow us to use that strategic petroleum reserve during times of war. That's the entire point of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So essentially, Biden, who claims that no one F's with a Biden, is getting screwed by OPEC right now and is, just making monstrous mistakes on his watch. And, 2 years worth of this guy, I don't know if we're going to be able to stand another 2 years after that. Okay. So before I move on to my next topic, I have to, of course, do the, I keep losing this. Okay. I have to do this right now.
Please check your mailbox. A new message has arrived.
That's right. We've got our pet of the week. And this week's pet of the week is submitted by Mama 5 Kitties. And this is a very well-loved animal. Let me just tell you that right now. Very well-loved. And let me go ahead and get rid of that. This is Max. And Max actually doesn't belong to Mama 5 Kitties. He belongs to her daughter, Gianna. And Gianna actually treats Max a lot like a son because of the fact that she doesn't have actual children of her own yet. But Max is very affectionate and very loving. And he also, apparently unusual, very unusual for a cat to do this, but he also apparently not only loves his fur coat, but he loves wearing sweaters over his fur coat. And he is, well, in this picture, it looks like he was stuffed into the sweater. I'm sorry, Mama. That just, I am so sorry. But yeah, it looks like he was stuffed in the sweater. But apparently he loves sweaters. Okay. And apparently he gets to take a trip to grandma's house 2 to 3 times a year. The only issue is that grandma's house has 5 cats. And this guy, Max, apparently likes to throw his weight around. Literally. He apparently bullies the other 5 kitties, unfortunately. But they make it. I mean, they make it work. And here he is showing off his sweater on the, oh, and look, he's even got socks. I didn't notice that before. He's got little sockies on his feet because I guess his paws were kind of cold. So, so that Max is a very, very odd kitty, I have to say. Very odd kitty, but a very affectionate and very well-loved kitty for our pet of the week. Thank you, Mama, for submitting this pet of the week. I do appreciate it. For those of you that want to get your pet featured, please send me a photo or photos and some information about the wonderful child of yours, and send it to fans. That is Foxtrot Alpha November Sierra at Whiskey Musings, all one word, all lowercase, .online. That's fans at whiskeymusings.online. You can send those to me and we'll get you your pet featured for Pet of the Week. I will let you know right now, I do not have any in the queue. So if I don't get any for the next week, then we'll have to skip it and move on from there. And so do me a favor, put that in. Also, because we're talking about it, you can also send me a questions for whiskey. I don't have one for this week for Saturday night show. So send me a question for whiskey to the same location. And of course, if you miss my talking about the email address, it is in the description of the videos on Rumble and YouTube. So you can go and submit those there, as well as anything else that you want to Send me. Okay. Now, my next big story, okay, happens to be the continuation of Biden and his misuse of money. Biden apparently believes that because he is the president, that he has the ability to just spend money and forgive loans willy-nilly. Now, we all know that Nancy Pelosi made the comment at one point that the president does not have the ability to just go and forgive loans, okay? Just does not have that capability because Congress constitutionally holds the purse strings. So in order for Biden to actually forgive student loans, he would, Congress would have to go ahead and do that. Well, unfortunately, Nancy Pelosi forgot that she made that comment. She forgot, and probably in a vodka driven stupor, did not realize that she was actually talking about Joe Biden when she said that, because of the fact that when he announced that he wanted to do student debt cancellation, she applauded it. She applauded it. Now, unfortunately for Biden and Joe, the Scranton kid, nobody F's with Joe Biden or a Biden. Guess what? He's been slapped down by the courts. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe he might rank up there as being the number one president who's been slapped down by the courts so often. He's got another one. In fact, he's got multiples coming to him. Let me explain. So there's 3 lawsuits that I'm aware of that have entered into the courts because of Biden's student debt cancellation order. The Pacific Legal Foundation, which is what this article in the Daily Wire kind of focuses on, filed a suit on Tuesday against the Biden administration for his policy to cancel up to $10,000 in student debt for millions of borrowers. Now, the argument is that Joe Biden's use of the HEROES Act, which was a 2003 law that was meant to aid Iraq war veterans coming back and their families, for him to use the HEROES Act as a justification to move for forgiving this debt is a overreach of what he can do. Okay. Now, Frank Garrison, who is a public defense attorney at the Pacific Legal Foundation and also listed as a plaintiff in this particular lawsuit, he will personally face a tax liability from the state of Indiana due to the cancellation of his debt. So this is where Joe Biden has once again not thought all the way through and just sort of grabbed a pie in the sky kind of thing and has made it to where he is probably going to lose at least one of these cases. Now, this isn't the only case, though. This was just the first case. And because Congress did not authorize the executive branch to go ahead and unilaterally cancel the student debt, the Pacific Legal Foundation attorney Caleb Kruckenberg says, it is flagrantly illegal for the executive branch to just create a $500 billion program by press release without statutory authority or even the basic notice and comment procedure for any new regulations. Now, they're kind of using the whole OSHA decision by the Supreme Court as the basis of their argument. Because, again, if you recall, with the whole OSHA mandate, the Supreme Court essentially said, look, regulatory agencies can't just make up willy-nilly by their own or on their own laws and regulations and things like that. They have to be directed to do so by Congress, by congressional statute. Okay. Now, this particular lawsuit was the first one to start. Then shortly after that, and this is the actual document from, and let me go ahead and see if I can zoom in on this. So this is the actual filed case, and I have a link in the show notes about this. But this actual case in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Missouri was filed, and look at the 6 states in this one. You have Nebraska, Missouri, Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, and South Carolina. All those attorneys general is the correct way to say it, I guess. The attorneys general for all those states decided to sue Joe Biden, Miguel Cardona in his official capacity as the Secretary of the Department of Education, as well as the Department of Education itself. And they are using roughly the same complaint in terms of the fact that the executive branch and its subsidiary regulatory bodies can't just magically make up a law or a statute. Okay. But this isn't the only one either. So I've shown you 2. Here's number 3. The Arizona AG also decided to sue. He put papers in as well to sue Biden to stop the illegal student loan handout as well. And the suit says that Biden violated the Constitution by putting taxpayers on the hook for the student loan debt. So, Joe basically has gone and stepped in it. He really, really has. Once again, and to be honest with you, there is a possibility that this is going to get cut down or taken down by the Supreme Court. And I'll show you why here in just a second. So there is a legal scholar, and this is in the Epoch Times. And this legal scholar is, let me find him, Giancarlo Canaparo. Wow, that's a mouthful. But anyway, he basically says that this whole thing went wrong from the start. And he has pinned this to that Joe has pinned this to the COVID-19 emergency, although he just said that we're no longer in the pandemic anymore. And that the U.S. Department of Education, like I talked about in my last episode, the U.S. Department of Education changed who is available or who is eligible for the forgiveness. They changed it in with the idea that they would avoid lawsuits, and that unfortunately isn't going to work. The department originally was expected to cover about 43 million Americans, but they announced that privately held loans, the Department of Education, by the way, will be excluded from the relief plan. Now, according to the latest estimates by like the CBO in particular, is that the price tag of this whole thing is going to cost taxpayers about $3 billion each year for the next, $30 billion each year for the next 10 years. That comes up to $300 billion for those that can't do math very quickly. And essentially the CBO also said that it would actually cost up to $400 billion of taxpayers' money over the next 30 years. So Biden is spending us into oblivion. He's trying to alleviate student loans, which of course is literally a loan that is supposed to be paid back. And now, and that loan would go quite a ways toward at least getting some of that 31 trillion taken down somewhat. And anyway, all the legal scholars are kind of looking at this, and this particular legal scholar is basically saying, yeah, I don't think that the rules change and everything else. I don't think that's going to work for getting him off the hook. So we have literally three cases that are going on right now, or going to be going on right now, in the near future, with regards to the student loans. And if you'll recall, when he first announced it, I basically said, I don't think this is constitutional. It is very likely that the Constitution is going to step in the way, of course, for this guy. Anyway, all right. So I don't know if anybody else noticed, but Twitter and the whole, sorry about that. The puppy dog, of course, knows that somebody came into the building. So, anyway, as I was saying, I don't know if anybody noticed, but Elon Musk has decided that doing his court thing, is not going to, go very well. And so he has re-offered to buy Twitter at the original $54.20 per share. Now, obviously, he doesn't think he's going to be able to win his court case. His lawyers probably don't either, and that he's going to end up probably buying it anyway. Well, I can tell you that this has a bunch of people, just a bunch of liberals in particular, up in arms today on Twitter. They are all over the place. They're talking about how, Elon is going to ruin Twitter. It's going to turn it into, a leaning organization or a leaning place. The funny thing about it is they're only going to be leaning. They're only going to be leaning the proper way for free speech, not the whole leftist communist cover up that is going on right now. And so, we also have, a article that came out, and of course this is dealing with censorship and free speech, but we also had this article come out as well, which is a bit of a scary thought also, but this coming from the World Economic Forum, of course. And the World Economic Forum basically is saying that they need to encourage big tech to get rid of disinformation. I mean, we've all heard about disinformation. We've all, heard the whole spiel from the left talking about how, speech or things that they don't like is considered disinformation, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that's really difficult about this, of course, is most of what they call disinformation is actually true information. This has been proven time and time again. And if you really want good investigative journalism on, in specifics, the COVID-19 vaccines, as well as the effects and so on and so forth that they're discovering now, you should go and check out the Epoch Times. They have a fantastic series of articles on what's happening with that. And, Dan Bongino has stated publicly that he regrets getting the vaccine, that he should have waited longer in order to get it. And so anyway, but the point here on this article is talking about if Facebook, Twitter, and Google hide information for the world's rulers, then elections are a scam. Well, guess what? That's exactly what frickin' happened in 2020. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, if you're on YouTube watching this, I am probably going to get kicked if the YouTube censors go and take a look at this. This is they do not like people talking about the 2020 elections. All right. But Facebook, Twitter, Google, they all hid the whole idea of the Hunter Biden laptop, which would have made an impact in the 2020 election. Maybe not enough to overturn it. But it would have affected it. Okay. Now, this is a problem in terms of, again, you're looking at, Google, setting up their search and their ads and all this other stuff. And of course, YouTube, which is, alphabet soup land also. So this should be something that would scare people, that should scare people. And what's even funnier is the fact that an NBC reporter has unwittingly talked about Twitter censorship being favored for Democrats. And this person, Ben Collins, says in his Twitter feed, for those of you asking, yes, I do think this site can and will change pretty dramatically if Musk gets full control over it. No, there is no immediate replacement. If it gets done early enough, based on the people he's aligned with, yes, it could actually affect the midterms. So Ben Collins, in an offhanded way, has been saying that Twitter has been leaning left and banning conservatives. Well, we all know that. We know that they've been banning conservatives. We know that they've been banning true free speech because they've allowed people like the Ayatollah Khomeini and a whole bunch of porn sites and child pornography on their site. It's been shown multiple times. So I personally, I said this when Elon first put out the offer. I think that he should pick it up and he should clean it out and he should make it a place for literally free speech. If it's not illegal, then it should be allowed on the site, regardless of whether you think it's disinformation or not, whether or not it's somebody's opinion. And that's what free speech is all about, like what I'm doing here, which, by the way, if you're watching me on YouTube and my channel all of a sudden disappears, head on over to Rumble. Rumble is the free speech alternative to YouTube. Go over there. Just like Elon is going to do with Twitter. Go over there. Once he buys it and hopefully cleans it up. Now, again, keep in mind, Elon is not a right-leaning person. He is actually more aligned as a libertarian. However, his recent tweets have been pushing that he is essentially turning more and more right because of the fact that the left has gone so far left, he doesn't want to follow it. Okay? So, now, one thing that could change how all big tech operates, places like Facebook and their algorithms where they suppress certain information like they did with the New York Post article, places like Twitter who suppresses free speech, they all come under what's called Section 230. Now, I've talked about Section 230 before in the past. For a quick synopsis, Section 230 outlines that if a technology organization is what's called a what's called a platform and not a publisher, okay, a platform and not a publisher, then they cannot be sued for things that people post on the platform. However, Twitter and Facebook have been leaning more and more toward being more like a publisher, which would be like your post-millennials, like your CNNs, like, who can get sued for libel and defamation and all of these other things. Okay. Now, the Supreme Court has actually agreed to hear a case challenging big tech's Section 230 legal protections. And this is, they agreed to it on Monday. So this is something that I am definitely going to keep an eye on. Okay. Because of the fact that this is a huge deal. If we can get big tech to stop having the Section 230 protections, so that they can, so that they can be held accountable, because as of right now, they technically can't because they are quote unquote a platform. Now, on the opposite side of things, if they decided that they wanted to stay as a platform, but again, just said, look, we're not censoring anything other than stuff that is literally illegal, like drugs, pornography, etc., then I could see that maybe they're going to be able to, work something out. But this is definitely something that I think is going to go. Now, this is the case is Reynaldo Gonzalez versus Google LLC. And this is the Axios reported that the case alleges YouTube aided and abetted in the death of Nohemi Gonzalez, a 23-year-old American woman who was killed in the 2015 ISIS attacks in Paris, along with 130 others, and injured more than 100. And the family sued Google, the parent company of YouTube, arguing that the platform's algorithms allowed and recommended terrorist-related content from ISIS to target users with hundreds of radicalizing videos inciting violence and recruiting potential supporters. And Google argued that the claims were barred under Section 230 and has since moved to dismiss the lawsuit. So, this is, the judge, apparently, according to The Hill, the judge of the case dismissed the case, but then also told the family to go ahead and appeal to the nation's highest court. I love this. I'm sorry for the reason as to why they are here, but I love the fact that this is going to the Supreme Court, and especially with the recent Supreme Court decisions, I honestly hope that this goes the correct way. Now, okay. So I'm going to take a second. I got to kind of clear off my screens here so that I can get to this. All right. Now, we all know that elections, and this is probably going to get me kicked also. We all know that elections are under fire, just like the FBI, just like the Department of Justice. There's a lot of questions that came out of 2020 that causes people with a half of a brain to question what is happening. Not that we're necessarily denying the election, but we're basically saying that, you know what, there's enough of an indicator here. In the case of there's enough smoke for us to believe that there is a fire going on. And so all of these things should be looked into. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the people who say, oh, there was no malfeasance during the election have not been noting all of the court cases that not the original ones that were brought, but the other court cases of people being hooked up for fraud and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, that being said, we also know that the Democrats and the liberals are really pushing to get illegals to be allowed to vote. California recently passed a law that allows illegals to vote in state voting, okay? In state races, not the presidential ones and not the United States ones, but at least the ones within the states and local, because of the fact, and I could see where the argument might come into play, but because of the fact that they should have a voice, because of course they are, they are affected by all of those laws. Now, realistically, you have to be a United States citizen in order to vote for the president, and to vote for the national elections. And the reason for this, if you go back in history, you'll also note that the Native Americans, were the Native Americans were not originally considered citizens, and so therefore they didn't get the opportunity to vote in our elections. So there's a lot of court case that could make the claim that a person who is a non-United States citizen does not have the capability of voting in our elections. They also are technically not covered by the Constitution because of the fact that the Constitution is supposed to cover United States citizens, people who are born or naturalized here in the United States. So when you see something like this and you start to wonder what the heck these people are going on about, but apparently Washington, D.C. City Council gives an initial approval to a bill that would allow non-citizens to vote. This is, again, this is an assault on our republic, not democracy, but our republic. This is an assault on the way that we conduct our politics and get our elected representatives, because we are a representative republic based off of the Constitution. Okay. Now, that being said, this isn't the only thing that the Democrats are doing. The Democrats are also trying to block, according to this Just the News article, the DNC wants to block a lawsuit that was brought over the filling in of incomplete absentee ballots. The DNC on Monday filed to join a suit seeking to allow local election clerks to continue filling in missing information from the ballots they receive this fall. Now, one of the things that a lot of states have, and I know like in my state, it is very, very particular, okay, about this. If you do not sign the ballot, well, of course, Washington is all mail-in voting. But if you do not sign the ballot, if you don't fill in the boxes completely, if you go outside of the squares that they have, then all of those things can be considered a item that can disqualify your vote. Well, here, apparently, let's see, where is this? Waukesha County. This looks like this is in Wisconsin, I think. Yes, it is in Wisconsin. So they are now, apparently a Waukesha County judge and the Republican-led legislature have said the Wisconsin Elections Commission overstepped its bounds with its guidance that allowed local clerks to complete absentee ballots without reaching out to the voters first. Lawmakers and the judge said state law is clear about the process for incomplete absentee ballots. So in other words, what they're saying is they are trying to get in this particular case, they're trying to get the state to allow clerks to just arbitrarily finish filling out the forms. So let me ask you this. If they are going to allow the state clerks to just arbitrarily finish the forms, what happens in the case of somebody who votes for just the president alone and not the local races, or somebody who goes and doesn't vote for the president, but votes for all the local races? Now you have a problem, because if they're going and filling this in, how do we know that they're not filling in a candidate that person may not have wanted? Or in the case of Joe Biden in 2020, maybe they got Joe Biden filled in when the person didn't want to vote for either one, either Trump or Biden. So all of this brings further into question more election issues. And this is part of the problem. Now, I personally hope that this comes down to, look, you accept the ballot. If you can't, you cannot fill it out. You must reach back out to the voter, have them correct it, which is something that we here in Washington actually do. Believe it or not, that if it comes in, they are supposed to make an attempt to try and get in contact with the voter to be able to allow the voter to resubmit a new ballot or correct the error. But this is a big deal. If they allow this, if Wisconsin allows this, if the Democrat Party wins in this case, this could be a huge, huge problem. Okay. And as far as DC is concerned, yes, Washington, DC is not a state. Just to go back to this, they are the District of Columbia. It is a 10 square mile area. And yeah, they don't have the same voting rights as an actual state. So yeah, they don't get electoral votes for president, et cetera, et cetera. So there are some special cases for Washington, D.C. But something like this, if it passes constitutional muster at the Supreme Court level, that could pave the way for other states to do the exact same. And especially because the Supreme Court actually has another case in front of it that has to deal with elections and election law and states' rights that is also on the docket for this session. So this Supreme Court session, I'm telling you, we're going to have to keep an eye on it. We're going to have to watch it because there are a lot of Supreme Court cases that have been accepted to be heard and that will change the way that our current system is thought to run, or confirm the way that is supposed to run under the Constitution that's been ignored for many, many years. All right. I have one last article, and this popped up. I wish Casey was in the chat tonight or watching this. Hopefully, she will be able to take a look and understand, but she tried to alert people to this. This is kind of scary for me. This is something that I don't think should be allowed, period. And for the fact that they even have gotten this far with it is making me very hesitant. For those of you that don't know, there's been talk for many, many years about NATO coming in and backing up our military in the case where we ended up in a martial law situation. And there's also been talk running through the Second Amendment community about how if NATO were to come here and try to enforce a ban on weapons constitutionally against the Second Amendment. This doesn't necessarily apply, but it could. And I'm a little wary of this particular situation. Now, that being said, America isn't the only place that is hosting these people. They actually have over 110 locations throughout the world for this. But the fact that it's actually showing up here in America and it's being allowed is really, really suspect. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is China has apparently opened up a police station in the U.S. and multiple locations up in Canada to supposedly monitor Chinese citizens. Now, this is a report that came out, and I'm not exactly sure when it came out, but it wasn't too long ago. But apparently there's 4 locations here in the North Americas. 3 of them are in Toronto, and 1 is in New York City. And apparently there are other stations elsewhere, most of them being in Europe. Okay. So here's the thing. Why would America allow China to put a police station, not an embassy, not a diplomatic center, but a police station on American soil? Now, to be fair, there's not a lot of understanding right now as to what the police can do in the case of international law, et cetera, et cetera. But here's kind of an idea of where I'm kind of going with this. Interpol, which is an international police agency. Interpol does not do operations here within the United States. They have to hand off or rely upon such organizations as the FBI in order to work with Interpol and be able to track suspects and subjects here in the United States because of the fact that we have protections as Americans. The question becomes, what are these Chinese police going to have access to? Because they're tracing and tracking Chinese nationals within the U.S. borders. Because they're doing this, what says that they're not going to be able to tap into and get into a line, kind of like our NSA does, and the whole FISA court does, where if we suspect a foreign national having a problem, that they can tap into the lines without necessarily having a warrant, as long as the American's identity is masked. General Flynn kind of found out about that. Okay. So this right here scares the living bejesus out of me. They should never have been allowed to set up a police station in the United States borders. They should have just been, I mean, as far as Biden is concerned, he should just look at him and go, you know what? You guys are out of here. You're done. But we know that Biden, who, Scranton kid, nobody F's with a Biden. Guess what? The CCP is effing with a Biden right now. They're effing with the American people. Okay. Now, this is, again, this is scary. Now, the CCP has been doing all kinds of stuff, like trying to buy up farmland next to an Air Force base. And I brought you an article, this was probably a month ago in one of my episodes, where I talked about how Huawei, the Chinese telecommunications company, came here and was potentially interfering with our nuclear capabilities and communications with our nuclear silos. And so this is just a further extension of allowing the Chinese into our borders and into our places. Now, it's not like they don't already own us. I know that China owns a lot of our debt. Okay. And they just keep piling it on. They keep taking on more. But eventually, if this guy, Xi Jinping, becomes the lifetime ruler of the CCP, I personally fully expect that Taiwan will be invaded shortly after that. Now, that election is coming up in November, sometime in November. I can't remember the exact date, but this is a further reach toward globalism, and this is a further reach toward less of American nationalism. This is a problem. This is a big problem. And I honestly, I don't understand why they were even allowed to do this, but this is a big red flag. Huge red flags, folks. Huge red flags. And the fact that we're not even having any kind of arguments against it or anything like that just yet. Now, granted, keep in mind that did just pop. I'm sure that the Bongino 72-hour rule is going to come into play with regards to it. But yeah, that's a huge red flag. I mean, we are losing, not losing like races and stuff, but we are starting to lose our sovereignty between the border and, allowing illegals to vote in certain states. And now we have a foreign entity who actually has a police presence here in the United States. This is dangerous times, folks. All right. That is my final Whiskey Musings thought. Do me a favor. If you like the program and you like what I do, go ahead and run on over to Rumble. I'm not going to advocate going to YouTube anymore. You can go to YouTube as long as I'm still there, although I fully expect within the next week or two, I'm probably going to get cut off. But go on over to Rumble and sign up. It's free. And look me up. Look up the Whiskey Musings Broadcast on Rumble and subscribe. You can come on over and join into the chat during my live streams for all of these wonderful people that are over here that are also Mark K. Patriots as well. They have Whiskey Warrior P1s. I would appreciate it very much. Also, don't forget to hit the plus button. Get me more Rumbles, because the more Rumbles I get, the more people who subscribe to my channel, the wider audience I have, and the more people who can come and listen to my show. Also, I'm going to ask my Whiskey Warrior P1s as well. If you have social media accounts, do me a favor. I am trying to spread the word on my program. Please share, like, send out links when I stream, that kind of stuff. Do me a favor. help me out here. I'm trying to expand the broadcast. All right. That is it. And I will see you next time. Oh, don't forget Saturday night. I need questions for whiskey. So send them on in. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast right here, Saturday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And we'll see you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.